If someone had told me that I'd leave my cheating husband and find true love with a powerful billionaire woman, I think I would have cried with relief. The magnetic pull. The charity gala was a sea of sculpted updo and diamond-cold smiles. Meticulously curated jungle where the wealthy came to see and be seen. For Elena, it was just another cage, albeit one gilded with champagne flutes and the soft murmur of a string quartet. On her arm, her husband, Damian Blackwood, CEO of Thorn Industries, was holding court. His voice a booming, self-satisfied instrument that cut through the polite conversation. He was discussing a hostile takeover, his words laced with a predatory glee that made Elena's skin prickle. She was his most exquisite accessory tonight. Her emerald green gown chosen by him to complement his eyes and project an image of flawless, united power. She smiled, the expression a well-practiced mask that felt like it might crack at any moment. Her gaze, as it so often did these days, drifted away from Damian pining form. It scanned the room past the bored socialites and the hungry investors, until it found her, Sloane Archer. She is the CEO of the rival Archer Innovations was everything Damian was not. Where he dominated a room with volume, she commanded it with a silent potent gravity. She stood near a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city, a sleek silhouette in a tailored, stark white tuxedo jacket that screamed of confidence rather than conformity. She wasn't holding a crowd captive with stories of corporate plunder. She was listening, truly listening, to an elderly investor, her head tilted, a faint, genuine smile on her lips. Elena felt a familiar, strange pull in her chest, a sensation she couldn't quite name. It was more than admiration, more than simple curiosity. It felt fated, like a compass needle finally finding its true north after spinning for years in the wrong direction. Sloane's confidence wasn't arrogant. It was innate, effortless. Her kindness, evident even from across the room, wasn't a performance for social gain. It was simply who she was. Damian followed her line of sight and his grip on her elbow tightened, almost imperceptibly, still trying to get a read on the competition. "My dear," he murmured, his voice dripping with condescension, "don't waste your energy. Archer is all style, no substance. A sentimentality that will be her downfall." Elena's mask didn't slip. She simply took a sip of her champagne, the bubbles sharp on her tongue. "I find her style rather compelling. It's a refreshing change from the usual corporate gray." Damian snorted. "It's a gimmick. This industry isn't won by being refreshing. It's won by being ruthless." He said the word like a compliment to himself. Elena said nothing. She knew all about his ruthlessness. She lived with it. Later, as she extricated herself to fetch a fresh drink, or more accurately, a moment of peace, a smooth, warm voice sounded behind her. "If I didn't know better, Mrs. Hart, I'd think you were following me." Elena turned and there was Sloane holding two glasses of champagne, a playful glint in her sharp, intelligent eyes. She offered one to Elena. "Seems we have the same taste in terrible champagne and tedious networking events." The magnetic pull intensified. A low hum under Elena's skin. She accepted the glass, their fingers brushing. A simple accidental touch, yet it sent a jolt through her. Perhaps it's not the events, but the company one hopes to find at them, Elena replied, surprising herself with her own boldness. Sloane Archer's smile widened, a real crinkling at the eyes affair that was devastatingly attractive. A diplomat's answer. "I like it." She leaned in conspiratorially. "I saw you across the room. You have the look of a woman who's calculated the exact weight of every jewel in this room, and found them all wanting." Elena laughed, a genuine, unfettered sound she rarely made at these things. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those of us who are also playing the same game," Sloane Archer said, her gaze flickering over Elena's shoulder. No doubt to where Damian was still holding forth. Her expression didn't change, but a subtle knowingness passed between them, a shared understanding of the man Elena was married to. Sloane Archer had never been anything but courteous to Elena, even though Damien's dislike for her was legendary, born from a humiliating rejection when he'd once proposed a merger. On personal terms, Sloane Archer had found deeply unprofessional. "Your husband seems in high spirits," Sloane Archer remarked, her tone perfectly neutral. Yet Elena heard the layers beneath it. "He usually is when he's talking about himself," Elena said dryly. Sloane Archer burst out laughing, a rich, warm sound that drew a few glances. "Oh, I do enjoy running into you, Elena. You're the only one who tells it like it is in this den of vipers. It's the highlight of my month." Their chemistry was effortless, a rapid-fire volley of wit and unspoken understanding. They fell into easy conversation about art, a shared passion Damien dismissed as a frivolous hobby. Sloane spoke with a fierce passion about a new digital installation she was funding, her ideas revolutionary and exciting. Elena found herself talking, not just to listen, but to engage, to challenge, to bask in the glow of Sloane Archer's focused attention. With Sloane Archer, she wasn't an accessory or a trophy. She felt seen. Her opinions mattered. Her mind was interesting. After 10 minutes, Damien materialized at her side, his presence like a cloud blocking the sun. "Darling, the Whitmores are waiting. We mustn't be rude." His tone was pleasant, but his eyes were cold chips of ice as they landed on Sloane Archer. Sloane Archer still circling to lure away my finest asset. Sloane Archer didn't hesitate for a second. Her smile was sleek, corporate, yet her gaze carried a hardness that mirrored Damien. "Just appreciating the view, Damien. You might give it a try sometime." She offered a small, gracious nod toward Elena. "A pleasure, as always, Elena. Don't be a stranger." As Damien steered her off, his hold tighter than required, Elena glanced over her shoulder. Sloane was already deep in conversation with another guest. Yet for a passing heartbeat, their eyes caught again. Sloane gave her a tiny, near invisible wink, and in that instant, wrapped by everything she had been taught to desire, Elena felt the first clear fracture in the structure of her life. It wasn't a noise of shattering. It was the quiet, inexorable pull of a new gravity. And its title was Sloane Archer, Part 2, Fissures in the Marriage. The revelation wasn't some operatic, heart-shattering scene. It was a cool, dull, devastatingly ordinary confirmation of a truth she had carried in her bones for years. No burner phone, number clandestine email, no rouge smudged on a collar. It was a hotel charge on their joint American Express for a suite at the Pendleton, dated to nights earlier, when Damien had sworn he was at the office late preparing for a merger. Elena sat at her immaculate vanity, the embossed invoice feeling tawdry and toxic between her fingers. The room, her retreat of cream silk and softened light, seemed to cant on its axis. She didn't weep. She didn't shout. She only studied her reflection. The elegant brunette with flawless makeup, the spouse of a powerful CEO, the lovely empty vase on his mantel, a bitter, acrid tang rose in her throat. The Pendleton. He hadn't even bothered to be imaginative. It was the same hotel where he'd brought her for their first anniversary, a place she had warmly, naively linked to a time when his hunger had felt like passion trained on her. The humiliation didn't stem from the betrayal itself, but from its lazy execution. It was an affront to her intelligence. He thought so little of her, felt so secure in his control, that he hadn't even taken pains to bury it. He'd made her a fool, not only in private, but in the most public and pedestrian fashion on a monthly statement. Her eyes, usually so calm and composed, sharpened in the glass. The green seemed to deepen, flecked with shards of ice. She saw not a wronged wife, but a woman who had accepted a bargain, and now realized the other party had defaulted in the most contemptible way. She had known Damien was beneath her. She had known it the day she married him. He was a blustering weather front of ego and greed, yet he had been her storm. She had presented him her loyalty, her poise, Her social finesse assets he desperately required to ascend from new money brute to respected titan. She had smoothed his roughness, curated his persona, and stood beside him through every ruthless deal. Her silence a blade he never knew he wielded. She had given him the one treasure she considered sacred, her word, and in exchange, he had handed her a receipt. A cold, methodical fury began to unfurl in her core, so strong it took up space. It burned away the last vestiges of any tender feeling she might still harbor. This wasn't about a broken heart. It was about a broken contract. He had breached the terms of their unspoken pact and, by doing so, declared war. The fawade held. Of course it did through dinner that evening, where he droned about the upcoming board session, completely blind to the tectonic shift that had realigned inside her. She nodded at the proper times, asked perfunctory questions about the stock, and slid him the salt. Her hand did not tremble, her smile did not falter. She was the consummate wife, even as she mentally logged every weakness, every corner cut, every shady handshake he'd ever boasted about after one too many scotches. Inside, though, she was ablaze. The anger was a living creature, whispering to her in the accent of her own smothered potential. It conjured images of his collapse, his face blanching as security walked him out of his tower, the sneers of his so-called friends, the financial wreckage, the complete annihilation of the reputation he prized above everything else. And she swore, silently, that every step from now on would count. Nothing he valued would be spared, ever. And through the smoke of this internal conflagration, a single clear image emerged to calm the roaring in her ears. Sloane Archer who looked at her and saw a mind, not just a mirror. Sloane Archer, whose confidence was born of competence, not conquest. Sloane Archer, who had rejected Damien's proposal, not out of spite, but out of a profound and accurate understanding of his character. Sloane was the antithesis of everything Damien was. Where he was loud, she was assured. Where he was greedy, she was ambitious. Where he sought to possess, she sought to build. The betrayal made the memory of Sloane Archer's presence feel like a lifeline. That easy chemistry, that sense of being truly seen. It wasn't a frivolous distraction. It was a premonition. It was the blueprint for what she should have had, for what she deserved. Lying in bed that night, the space between her and Damien a cold yawning chasm. Ellen didn't plan her tears. She planned his annihilation. And she knew with a certainty that felt as deep and ancient as the pull of the tide, that the key to it all was the one person her husband resented above all others. The thought didn't bring a smile to her face, but a slow, chilling sense of purpose. The elegant wife was gone. In her place, something sharper, harder, and infinitely more dangerous was being forged in the fire of his stupidity. Part 3. A dangerous proposal. The Archer Innovations Tower was a shard of obsidian and light piercing the midnight sky. At this hour, the lobby was a tomb of polished marble, their footsteps the only sound echoing in the vast empty space. The security guard, expecting her, simply nodded and ushered Adelanado a private elevator that shot skyward with a silent pressure. Eyes were her reflection in the bronze-toned doors was a study in controlled chaos. Outwardly, she was the picture of elegant composure, wrapped in a tailored black coat, her makeup flawless. But her eyes, usually so placid, held a storm. The humiliation had curdled into a cold, focused rage that vibrated just beneath her skin. The elevator doors opened not into a bustling cubicle farm, but directly into Sloane Archer's inner sanctum, her corner office. The room was a testament to its owner, sleek, intelligent, and powerful. One entire wall was glass, offering a breathtaking, dizzying panorama of the city's glittering grid. The other walls were lined with minimalist shelves holding a mix of tech prototypes, serious-looking business volumes, and unexpected pieces of modern art. The air smelled of bergamot, clean leather, and old money. Sloane Archer stood by the window, backlit by the urban galaxy, a silhouette of quiet authority. She wasn't in her usual sharp suit, but in dark tailored trousers and a simple cashmere sweater, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. She held two glasses of a deep amber whiskey. "I figured you could use something stronger than champagne," she said, her voice a low, warm contrast to the room's cool modernity. She turned and crossed the room, handing one glass to Elena. Their fingers brushed again, and this time the contact felt intentional, grounding. "Tell me everything." And Elena did. She didn't weep. She didn't rant. She laid it out with the cold, dispassionate precision of a prosecutor presenting a case. The credit card bill, the hotel, the pattern of late nights and business trips that now clicked into a damning mosaic. She spoke of the humiliation not of a heartbroken woman, but of a partner whose equity in a shared enterprise had been devalued by a catastrophic breach of contract. Sloane listened, leaning against the edge of her monumental desk. She didn't offer empty platitudes or gasp in theatrical shock. She simply absorbed the information, her sharp blue eyes missing nothing, the slight tremor Lenacolt control in her hand before she clenched it, the flat, deadly calm of her voice. Sloane was processing, calculating, connecting dots Elena had even drawn yet. When Ella finished, the only sound was the faint hum of the city below. Sloane Archer took a slow sip of her whiskey. "He's an idiot," she stated, her tone flat and final. "A short-sighted, vain-glorious idiot who never deserved a second of your loyalty." She set her glass down with a soft click. "But you're not here for my assessment of his character. You're here because you want to break him." It wasn't a question. It was a recognition of a kindred spirit. Elena held her gaze, the storm in her own eyes, meeting Sloane Archer's calm, analytical fire. "I want to reduce his empire to dust and make him watch." A slow, dangerous smile touched Sloane Archer's lips. It wasn't cruel. It was appreciative. "Good." She pushed off the desk and walked to a sleek panel on the wall. Tapping it, a screen illuminated, displaying complex financial charts. "I've been buying up shares in Thorne Industries for the past 18 months, quietly through several holding companies. He's too arrogant to have properly scrutinized." Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. She'd hoped for an ally, for resources, but not for a weapon of this magnitude already forged and waiting. "I am, as of last week, his majority investor," Sloane Archer said, her voice dropping into a confidential intimate register. "The board answers to me. All we need is the right leverage, a push. If we can collaborate to uncover some of those shady backdoor deals he's so proud of, the ones that skirt the edge of legality, we can call an emergency vote. I can have him ousted, not just fired, erased. He'll be voted off the island so fast, he'll get whiplash." The plan was exquisite, brutal, efficient. It was everything Jelinate. Yet, as she looked at Sloane Archer, the intelligence, the power, the sheer audacity of having already positioned herself for this very moment, she knew it wasn't enough. Financial ruin was one thing, but Damien Currency was ego. His reputation was his temple. To truly destroy him, they had to desecrate it. A wicked, slow smile spread across Elena's face, the first genuine expression she'd felt in days. It was a blade being unshaved. "That's part one," she said, her voice a husky whisper. Sloane Archer's eyebrow quirked. "There's a part two." "Oh, yes." Elena took a step closer, the whiskey forgotten in her hand. "Part two is the poetry, the narrative. He doesn't just get outplayed in business, he gets humiliated in life." She paused, letting the anticipation build. "We give them a show. We give the press, the socialites, his entire world, a story they will never forget." Sloane watched her, utterly captivated, a spark of intense curiosity in her eyes. What story? The story of how his discarded wife didn't just take his company, Ellen appeared, closing the final distance between them until they were almost sharing the same breath. She took the woman he could never have, the woman who publicly rejected and humiliated him years ago. "We fake it," We let the world believe we're together. We become the city's most talked about power couple, and he becomes the pathetic cuckold who lost everything to the two women he underestimated most. The silence that followed was electric. Sloane didn't move. She just stared at Elena, her expression unreadable. For a heart-topping second, Elena wondered if she had gone too far, misjudged this moment, this woman entirely. Then Sloane Archer threw her head back and laughed. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a full-bodied, joyous roar of delight that filled the vast office. She reached out, her hand gently gripping Elena's forearm as if to steady herself. "Oh my God," she breathed, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of awe and sheer amusement. "Elena Hart, you are deliciously, magnificently evil. I had no idea you had this in you." The tension shattered, replaced by a crackling, collaborative energy. "So, you'll do it?" Ellen asked, though she already knew the answer. Sloane Archer's laughter subsided into a wide, predatory grin. "Do it, darling. I'm already drafting the press release in my head. It's the most brilliant corporate and personal takedown I've ever heard." She picked up her whiskey glass and clinked it firmly against Elena's, which was still hanging limp in her astonishment. "To the story," Sloane Archer said, her voice dropping to an intimate conspiratorial murmur. "Let's give them one hell of a show." Part 4. The Public Break. The boardroom of Thorne Industries was a temple to Damien's ego. 20 feet of polished mahogany, leather chairs that sighed with the weight of important men, and a breathtaking view of the city he believed he owned. At the head of it all, Damien held court, presiding over the quarterly earnings meeting with the bombastic air of a Roman emperor. He was in his element, basking in the nodding approval of his board, a pack of older gentlemen who mirrored his confidence and shared his myopia. Elena observed it all from the doorway for a moment. Unseen, she saw not powerful leaders, but relics, not shrewd businessmen, but sycophants. They were an audience, and she was about to give the performance of a lifetime. She had dressed for the role, not in the soft, forgiving fabrics Damien preferred, but in a severe, razor-sharp sheath dress the color of arterial blood. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek, unforgiving chignon. Her makeup was flawless, her posture ramrod straight. She was no longer the elegant accessory. She was the executioner. She pushed the double doors open. They swung inward with a weighty thud that cut Damien off mid-sentence. "And so we see a projected increase in market share of." He stopped, his expression flickering from irritation to confusion to a forced patronizing warmth. "Elena, darling, this is a closed meeting. I'm sure whatever it is can wait." The board members shifted in their seats, some smiling indulgently at the CEO's interrupted by the wife moment, a familiar trope in their world. "I'm afraid it can't," Elena said, her voice not loud, but clear and carrying, leered with a steel they had never heard from her. She walked into the room, her heels clicking a precise metronomic rhythm on the hardwood floor. She didn't look at any of them. Her eyes were locked on Damien. Behind her, a man and a woman in sober dark suits followed her lawyers. They fanned out slightly, a silent professional presence that immediately killed the last of the indulgent smiles in the room. The atmosphere shifted from a board meeting to a courtroom. "Elena, what is the meaning of this?" Damien's voice lost its warmth, becoming a low growl. A tendon throbbed along his temple. She halted at the far end of the table from him, a purposeful placement that set them up as adversaries. She set her leather folio on the surface, but did not flip it open. She required no notes. "Damien Blackwood," she began, her cadence coolly formal, a stark counterpoint to the intimate stage he assumed he commanded. "I am here today to advise you that our marriage, a partnership you have repeatedly and brazenly breached, is over." She tipped her chin toward her attorney, who stepped ahead and sent a thick envelope gliding the length of the polished mahogany. It slid to a precise stop right in front of his blotter. "You are hereby served with divorce papers," Elena said, citing irreconcilable differences and naturally, adultery. A collective sharp breath swept through the room. Startled looks were traded. Damien's face flooded a dark, ugly plum. He did not touch the packet. He looked as though he had been physically hit. "You stupid bitch," he hissed. His voice a strangled whisper meant only for her, but it carried in the deathly, quiet room. "You'll get nothing. You signed your own poverty order." Elena's smile was a cold, cutting thing. "Oh, I disagree. But my personal accounts are the smallest of your problems today." She finally opened her folio, drawing out a single sheet of paper. "You see, while you were otherwise engaged at the Pendleton, the controlling stake in this company was being purchased quietly, efficiently." She let the sentence float in the air. Damien's confusion was visible. Arrogance made him slow. He could not imagine a danger he had not already foreseen. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a new majority investor," Elena said, her voice sinking into an easy, almost playful tone more frightening than any shout. "One who has reviewed the company's recent ventures, especially the Parian Basin acquisition, and the very imaginative bookkeeping around the Singapore arm, and deems them not merely ethically vile but legally perilous." She ticked off the deals by name, the real names, the ones from private servers and off-the-books meetings he assumed were hidden. The color drained from Damien's face, leaving him a pasty, stunned specter of himself. The board members now sat bolt upright, eyes wide with dawning horror. They recognized those names. They had approved those transactions. "The investor," Elena continued, savoring every syllable, "has called an emergency vote of no confidence. The motion is to remove you, Damien Blackwood, immediately from your post as CEO and from the board of directors, effective this moment." "That's impossible," Damien roared, pounding his fist onto the wood. "I am this company. Who would dare?" The doors at the rear of the boardroom opened again. Every head swiveled. Sloane Archer stood there, lounging casually against the jamb, one hand in the pocket of her impeccably cut trousers. She did not need to step farther in. Her presence was explosive. She gave the room a small, frost-bitten smile. "The motion has been seconded and passed," she said, her voice calm and clear, effortlessly owning the space. "The majority shareholder has spoken. Security, please escort Mr. Blackwood from the building. He no longer has permission to remain on the premises." It was the finishing masterstroke. The woman he had coveted, who had humiliated him by turning him down, was now the designer of his professional destruction. The symbolism was so exact it was cruel. Two uniformed security officers entered, faces stern and impersonal. They moved toward Damien. "You can't do this," he screamed, his voice breaking with a mix of fury and undiluted panic. He was coming apart in real time, his meticulously crafted persona splintering into a million shards. He jabbed a trembling finger at Elena, then at Sloane. "This is a setup. You framed me, you psychotic lesbians. This is... Get your hands off me." The guards each took an arm. He thrashed, his shouts turning incoherent, pitiful bellows of rage as he was bodily hauled from his throne, past the silent, stunned directors who were already mapping how to align themselves with the new order. Elena watched him go, her expression unchanged. She did not feel glee. She felt a deep, settling sense of justice. The scales had evened. As the door swung shut, muffling Damien's fading screams, her gaze found Sloane Archer's across the breadth of the room. Sloane Archer's amused, impressed stare was trained solely on her. She didn't look at the chaos. She looked at the cause of it, at Elena, and slowly, deliberately, she gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a nod of respect, a nod between equals, a nod that said the show was just beginning. Part 5. Instagram detonation. The morning after the boardroom coup dawned bright and obscenely cheerful. Sunlight streamed into Elena's the penthouse illuminating the stark emptiness of a life she was already halfway out of. The silence was a physical presence, and it was glorious. No Damien blustering about the markets. No tense, perfunctory conversations over breakfast, just the quiet hum of the city below, and the electric thrum of victory in her veins. She sat cross-legged on the vast, unused bed, a sleek laptop before her. The world was already ablaze. News alerts pinged incessantly on her silenced phone. Thorn Industries CEO ousted in hostile takeover. Shareholder revolt rocks financial district. Scandal and divorce for disgraced titan Damien Blackwood. It was a symphony, but it was only the overture. The main event required a more modern, more vicious stage. She opened Instagram. Her profile at Elena Hart was a carefully curated gallery of a life that had been a gilded cage. Charity galas, designer outfits, tasteful vacation shots, a perfect smiling lie. It was time to repurpose it. She scrolled through her camera roll, her finger pausing on a series of images from the previous night. After the boardroom spectacle, she and Sloane had retreated to Sloane Archer's home, a stunning architectural marvel that felt like a sanctuary. They had drunk expensive wine, not to celebrate, but to steady the adrenaline still coursing through them. Sloane had been buzzing with a fierce, proud energy, her eyes constantly tracking Elena's if she were a fascinating and explosive new invention. The photo was perfect. Sloane, still in her powerful trousers and a simple black tank top, looking down at Elena's hand, which she held with a surprising tenderness. Sloane Archer's lips were pressed against Elena's knuckles in a kiss that was both gallant and possessive. The angle was intimate, the focus sharp on their connected hands, their faces partially obscured, leaving just enough to the imagination. It was art. It was a declaration of war. It was a promise. Elena's fingers flew over the keyboard, crafting the caption with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel. It couldn't be long. It had to be a bullet, a better upgrade. Black spade. Hash. The spade emoji. A final petty perfect flourish. A nod to the suit he'd always thought made him look powerful. She didn't hesitate. She hit post. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then the first notification popped up. Then another. And then the screen began to explode. Likes, comments, tags, DMs, the digital equivalent of a crowd roaring. The comment section became a live feed of the socialite apocalypse. Oh my God. Is this real life? Wait, Sloane Archer. You two are a power couple. I'm deceased. This is the most iconic thing I've ever seen. So, this is why Damien got the boot. He was the third wheel. The spade. She used the spade. I'm screaming. Her phone began to ring. First, it was a society columnist, then a gossip podcast, then a number she didn't recognize. She silenced it all, a small wicked smile playing on her lips. She switched to a private browser tab and pulled up a popular gossip forum. The headline was already at the top of the page. Elena Hart drops husband, takes his rival, and his company. The most petty, perfect post in IG history. She scrolled, drinking in the chaos. There were screenshots of Damien's own, now deleted social media posts from years ago, fawning over Sloane. There were memes of his furious red-faced paparazzi, shot from outside Mr. Blackwood Industries building last night, juxtaposed with her serene, victorious post. His humiliation was complete, viral, and eternal. Her phone lit up with a text, not from a number, but a name, Sloane Archer. I just had 3 separate board members text me to ask if we're monetizing the narrative. I'm considering charging them for the exclusive. Elena Laud. A real full-bodied sound that echoed in the empty penthouse. Elena, tell them the narrative is priceless and that it's only just begun. A moment later, another text came through. Sloane Archer. Also, I didn't know I was an upgrade, but I'll certainly take it. The implication is flattering. Elena's smile softened. This was new territory. The banter had a different heat to it now, a charge that wasn't entirely for public consumption. She typed back, her heart beating a little faster. Elena, don't flatter yourself too much. I just knew you were always unequivocally out of his league. The response was immediate. Sloane Archer, and what league are you in, Elena? The question hung in the digital space between them, loaded and dangerous. It was no longer about him. It was about them. The chemistry they were weaponizing was starting to spark and catch fire for real, threatening to burn down the very line between performance and truth. The internet was exploding. Damien's reputation was in ashes, and Elena cooled. Focus on was the flirty, heated text conversation with the woman who had just helped her burn it all down. The game had suddenly become infinitely more interesting. Part 6. Crossing Lines. Their fake dating debut was the annual Contemporary Art Gala, an event dripping with the very same money and influence that had forged their old lives. It was the perfect arena. They arrived not arm in arm, but hand in hand, a subtle yet profound difference. Elena wore a gown of liquid silver that seemed to shift with her every move, while Sloane Archer was a study in stark elegance in a tailored black tuxedo with a crisp white shirt, no tie. They were a living sculpture of contrast and complement. The cameras flashed like a thunderstorm, capturing every moment. The whispered gasps were a palpable force as they moved through the crowd. Elena played her part to perfection, leaning into Sloane Archer's space to whisper a comment, letting her hand rest possessively on Sloane Archer's forearm as they laughed at some private joke. Sloane's role was the smitten, powerful benefactor, her gaze constantly tracking Elena with a warmth and intensity that felt real, too. They were a sensation. The story was too delicious. The scorned wife and the rival CEO united in love and corporate vengeance. It was the talk of the gala. But for Elena, the real performance began when the crowd thinned, when the watchful eyes were gone. Later, in the relative quiet of a secluded balcony overlooking the museum sculpture garden, the act didn't drop. It intensified, turning intimate and dangerously sincere. The champagne flute was cool in Elena's hand, but the space where Sloane Archer's shoulder brushed against hers was warm. You were magnificent in there, Sloane Archer murmured, her voice low for Elena's ears only. She wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at Elena's profile. A natural-born revolutionary. They're all terrified of you and utterly captivated, Elena turned to face her, the facade of the happy new couple softening into something more complex. It's easy to be captivating when I have the best possible prop. She gestured with her glass towards Sloane Archer, a teasing glint in her eye. Sloane Archer didn't laugh at the line. Her face stayed grave, her blue eyes searching Elena in the muted glow. Is that all I am, a prop? The query lingered between them, charged and weighty. The gala's noise receded to a far-off murmur. Isn't that the deal? Elena replied, her voice scarcely more than breath. Her heart began to hammer a wild pattern against her ribs. A very persuasive, very beautiful prop for my payback tour. Sloane Archer eased a half-step nearer, shrinking the already scant space. The trace of her perfume bergamotan's something singular, unmistakably Sloane, folded around Elena. The arrangement, Sloane Archer said softly, eyes briefly falling to Elena's mouth before finding her gaze again, was to act. But I'm discovering I'm not acting when I look at you. Elena's breath caught. The air between them sizzled. This was no longer for onlookers. This was a threshold, and they stood on its brink, savoring the play a little too much. Ms. Archer, Elena teased, grasping for footing on suddenly shifting ground, trying to deflect the frightening honesty in Sloane's eyes. Careful, or people will say you're actually falling for me. It was intended as a quip, a shard of their practiced banter, but Sloane didn't return it. She simply looked at her, expression unguarded and clear. The ruthless executive's mask had vanished, replaced by a bare, disarming tenderness. Maybe I am, Sloane Archer said, her voice so soft it nearly dissolved into the night's breeze. The world seemed to collapse to the inches between them. Elena's playful smile ebbed. She felt the warmth radiating from Sloane Archer, saw the faint beat at the base of her throat. This was no longer sport. Then even softer, almost a whisper, meant as much for herself as for Elena. Sloane Archer breathed. Maybe I already have. The words landed not like a confession but like a fact. A quiet, devastating truth released into the dark. They weren't pretending. They hadn't for some time. The hands that lingered, the looks that held a heartbeat too long, the magnetism that had drawn Elena from the start, it was all real. Their vengeance pact had been the tinder, but the blaze it sparked was wholly their own. Elena was speechless. The careful divide between performance and truth didn't merely haze, it shattered. The cool, calculating engineer of Damien's undoing was gone, and in her place stood simply a woman, breathless, terrified, exhilarated, staring at another who had just rewritten their entire script. Before she could assemble a thought, much less an answer, a couple tumbled onto the balcony, laughing too loudly. The moment splintered. For Part 2, subscribe to our channel, Fantasy Hub, and ring the bell.